بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Okay, so today inshallah we're going to learn the text of Al-Bayquniyyah. So it is a poem which is 33 or 34 lines, and it talks about the most important or the main kinds of the science of hadith, like sahih, da'if, shadh, munkar, mu'allal, etc. Very beautiful thing in our time. Actually, it used to be even in the time of Sahaba and Tabi'een. Imam Malik radiallahu anhu said once, some of his students came from far, and as I remember it was from Iraq, Allah alam, and he took all of Muwatta within 40 days. And then he said, Imam Malik said, it's very strange, I did collect all of Muwatta within 40 years. And now one of you taking it all within 40 days. And then he said, Imam Malik said, and do you think that you will understand what we did understand? It's impossible. So for example, someone spent 40 years on one book and the second only 40 days. So the understanding will be different. You understand? Yeah, so, and even maybe you can test the strength between the scholars. For example, pick up any book, Hidayah or any other book, and ask the Shaykh for how many years he has been attached to this book. So if he says 10 years and the second says 2 years, then definitely the one with 10 years, he will be much more higher than 2 years. And except it could be, sometimes it will be just gift by God. Someone will be just, he read the text only once, and he will be much more better than the one who was reading it for more than 20-30 years. So we inshallah most likely will finish it off all of the text inshallah today, but it should remain with you all the time. So you have to repeat it as a minimum once a year. That is wajib upon each of you, to repeat it once a year. Okay? Just to revise it by your notes, whatever you've written, and to try to find the meaning of each single word just by revising. Because anyway now, today it will be very intensive class, so you cannot focus on each single word. And even if I will focus to explain, you will not get everything. So you have to keep on revising. So it is wajib for you once a year. Okay? But if you will be teaching it, then that is even better. And I would recommend you to memorize the text. Okay, so let's read the text first, all of the text, and then maybe it will be easier for you to memorize it. Inshallah, now I will read it all, and inshallah maybe in about 2 days time, inshallah with the Sayyidi Jalil, inshallah I will record my voice again reading it. Okay, so you will have it with you all the time, just short text, but maybe 5 minutes as a maximum, so you can have it in your CDs or whatever, in your cars or whatever. Whenever you will be free, you will just revise it, so it will help you to memorize it. Okay. Okay. So the author of the book, his name is Taha Umar, or Umar Taha bin Muhammad bin Futuh al-Bayquniyyah al-Shafi'i al-Dimashqi. So his name is Umar Taha or Taha Umar. And also to have 2 names together, is it permissible or not? We say that is fine. And also it is basically the habit of our scholars also, our mashayikh. Yeah, so for example, if you want to name your son as Hussein, so they used to recommend us to put the name of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the names. For example, Mahmud Hussein or Ahmad Hussein or Muhammad Hussein. So both will be named. Okay, or even Taha is one of the names of the Prophet ﷺ. And there is hadith which is weak, in which Rasulullah ﷺ, anyone whose name is Muhammad will not enter the hellfire. Okay, so that's why basically our mashayikh, they like to combine two names as one name. For example, Muhammad Yasin bin something something, for example. So that's how it is Umar Taha or Taha Umar bin Muhammad bin Futuh Al-Bayquniyyah Al-Dimashqi Al-Shafi'i. And we don't know the exact date of his birth, and we don't know even when he did pass away. But only that we know is that he was alive at 1080th of Hijrah. So it is 1080 Hijrah, and it equals to about 1808. And the strange thing about this author, we know about him only that he was one of the scholars of Hadith. What about his shuyukh and etc.? We don't know that much. And maybe, inshallah, maybe one of you or one of the students or one of the scholars, inshallah, someday will be concerned about this great scholar who did serve us a lot by writing this manduma, and he will go to the ancient libraries of Uthmanis in Turkey, or libraries in Egypt, okay, or in Damascus, and he will find some sources of the biography of this scholar. But now only we can say that his name is so on, and he was alive at 1080th of Hijrah. That's it. And how old was he in that time, we don't know. And what about his books? Also, we don't have any idea, but only we know that this manzuma belongs to him. This poetry, this poem belongs to him. And we have quite a lot of number of commentaries on this book. And now it became one of the main texts by which the students of Hadith start off the seeking Hadith knowledge. So for example, if you want to be faqih, then either you will start by Nur al-Idah or by Quduri or by that kind of text. But if you want to be muhaddith, then that is either this, okay, or it will be either Nukhbatul al-fikr or that kind of very short texts. Okay, so this is very famous book, and also this has got priority on top of Nukhbatul al-fikr or any other book, because in terms of language is so easy and so delicious when you're reciting. Okay, and also you can memorize it very easily. Okay, and also the order of explanation, you can feel that it is like a building, very easy to build, and he's putting the break on top of each other, on top of the other. And Nukhbatul al-fikr by Shaykh Hajar Al-Asqalani, that is also a great book, but that he is following sometimes the logic way, the way of mutakallimin in terms of explaining, and complicated book. Even if it's smaller, that book is smaller than this, but that is complicated book. Okay, then why it named Bayquniya? Because the title of the author is al-Bayquniyyah, al-Shafi'i, al-Dimashqi. And manzuma, nazm, in Arabic language, poem. Nazm, and opposite of nazm is nasr. Nasr. Nasara in Arabic language, just to spread something. Just you will pick up some dust, and when you will just spread it, that is in Arabic language, nasr. But nazm is to put something into one line. For example, do you know the jewelry? Okay, so they put the jewelries one next to each other. So that is nazm. Okay. Yes. So and as you know, our alhamdulillah knowledge, it doesn't matter fiqh, hadith, anything. We have got both kinds of books. So even we have Nazm of Hidayah, the poem of Hidayah, if you want to memorize it, or even Nazm of Quduri, Nazm of Kanz Daqaq, Nazm of everything. Okay? And the same side we have Manzuma, Nazm of Hadithi and any other subject, grammar, okay, balagha, etc. So, Shaykh Umar Taha bin Muhammad bin Futuh al-Bayquniyyah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My question now, is it permissible to start Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before reading some poem?
I think as long as it's not do with shirk or anything like that, then I think there should be no problem reading a poetry with Bismillah ar-Rahman, because
if it's not
shirk or anything to do with guna.
You can. It's good to begin any action, good action, learning or studying.
No, but Shah is totally different. What do you think? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما علمناه الشعر. We didn't teach him a poetry. وما ينبغي له. And it's not allowed for him to say poetry also. Means to make poems. What do you think?
Oh, is this for is this for professor?
Give me proof for that.
No, Shafi was surprised. It's not true.
I'm saying to you, قال الرسول, you're saying to me, قال الشافعي.
If the Prophet ﷺ was seen to recite poetry, then he could be accused of saying that this is from him because he was a poet, and so that prohibition was to him. However, when he had his own poet, Hassan ibn Atabek, so he had.
Okay, yes, correct, yes. But basically, we say this is only for the Prophet ﷺ, but even by then we have two decisions. Inshallah, we'll go to that. We say Rasulullah ﷺ, he didn't used to make poems, but he used to listen to the poets. You know? For example, sometimes they used to sit in the gathering, and Sahaba used to discuss about the Jahili issues, and some of the poems they used to recite. So they used to laugh, and also used to smile. Means that is permissible. Yeah. But in terms of the prophethood, the level of prophethood is much more higher than to make poems. Okay? And in terms of the disagreement, they say Sha'bi and Zuhri. Imam Zuhri said, both of them, Atabein, both say it's haram to start Sha'r by Bismillah. Okay? We say, according to Hanafi madhab, to commit sin by naming God, that can constitute kufr. If it is major sin, zina, drinking alcohol, etc., anyone who says Bismillah ar-Rahman and then starts, he became kafir. Did you understand? But if it is minor sin, then to start the minor sin by Bismillah, so that is either kufr or either major sin. Because you are putting the name of God on wrong place. Did you understand? And because of the same issue, we made takfir of those who are writing the name of God and putting it into the paper and putting it into the kafan. Because that is lowing and putting the name of God into the filth. Okay? Because the body will start decomposing and the blood and the najasa will touch the name of God. So that causes kufr. And they made up a new issue saying that if you will if you will roll it over into the some plastic bag, then you can do it. We say one day that plastic bag will be destroyed also. Then definitely, why do you need to stick on your point? Why you cannot, nothing can please you except putting the name of God inside of the filth? Why you cannot relax without that? Okay, if you're concerned about your father, then make dua for your father, but do not abuse the name of God by putting it into the filth. That is kufr. Okay? But if it is permissible things, mubah things. So some of our scholars said it's not right, it's not recommended, because to name the God in very low things. For example, you are wearing your shoes, and then you are saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Because wearing shoes is mubah, it's permissible first of all, but it is not that high thing. Okay, but the second majority of Ahnaf, they said it is still recommended, because you are not lowering the name of God by using it in such kind of low things, but you are rising the mubah thing into the high level by using the name of God. So we said that is mustahab. Okay, so in terms of shar, is it mubah or is it makruh, or what is that? We say shar, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, inna min ash-sha'ri la hikmatan. Definitely, some poems has wisdom in it. Means it is permissible. Then Imam Shafi'i radiallahu anhu says, anything which is in normal speech bad, that is bad in the poem. And anything which is in normal speech good, that is good in the poem. So that is the main thing. And we say then, to say Bismillah before reading the poem, it should be permissible. And that is the position of Sa'id ibn Jubayr radiallahu anhu, one of the tabi'in. And we do follow that. And that is the opinion of majority of scholars. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah, I'm starting whatever I'm doing by the name of God. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman is, we have so many opinions in terms of Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and we say both are sifa mubalagha. I mean, sigha mubalagha or sifa mushabbah or whatever. So it is very extreme version of mercy, both. Okay, and Ar-Rahman is something which is in dunya for both of Muslims and non-Muslims, and Ar-Rahim is only for the day of judgment. Do you understand? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَانَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَحِيمًا, and He is very merciful with believers. Okay? And there is some hadith in which Rasulullah says, إِنَّ لِلَّهِ مِئَةَ رَحْمَةً, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 100 mercies. Okay, it was just as example. And then He said, but Allah basically sent down one mercy to the creature, so by that mercy, everyone basically feels merciful, to be merciful in this world. So from the time of this world was created, all of angels, till the end of the day. Okay, so all of these mercies, of, for example, mercy of father to his son, mother to her son, or for example, teacher to the student, and animals, and etc. Everyone, that is small share of one only mercy of God. And then Rasulullah says, but He kept 99 mercies for the day of judgment, so He will use it for believers. Did you understand? So that is amazing hadith. So وَكَانَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَحِيمًا. So we say Rahim is only specifically for Muslims. This attribute basically linked to the Muslims specifically. Then author says, أبدأ بالحمد مصليا على محمد خير نبي أرسل. I'm starting my poem by praising God, bilhamdi, by praising God, musalliyan, and by praying upon Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best prophet that has been sent. So alhamd, praising is, the thanking and praising. There is difference, which we did explain for several times. So praising is, even if he does something good to you, or if he doesn't, that is still applicable. You will be praising. But thanking is only if he does something good to you, so you are rewarding him by thanking. Okay? مصليا على محمد خير نبي أرسل. And also I'm starting my poem by praying upon the best prophet that have been sent ever, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now my question, to pray upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when you will hear his name, what is that?
It's wajib once in a lifetime anyway.
Okay.
And the first time you hear it, you say it. And then if you don't say it, it's okay.
Okay, so when you say wajib, we say that the meaning of wajib is fard. So once a lifetime is fard. But each time when you will hear him doing that, to keep on repeating it, that is sunnah mustahabba. And according to Brailway scholars, it is still wajib. Whenever you will hear someone saying Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or one of the names of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then it becomes wajib to pray upon him according to Brailways. And there is some minority Hanafi mutaakhirin scholars back up that opinion, but we say that is weak opinion. We say fard is once a lifetime, but mustahab to repeat it whenever you will hear someone reciting it. And then he says, خير نبي أرسل, the best prophet that has been sent. There is no any disagreement amongst Muslims, that amongst all of Muslim scholars, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is not only the best prophet, but he is the best creature. Okay, and basically they did back up the opinion by several hadith. For example, Jibreel sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he supposed to be the best, but even when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam he went to Mi'raj, so Jibreel sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had to leave the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in some point. Okay, and Rasulullah he basically completed the journey on his own. Okay, so it is the same as, for example, me and my son and one of my students. Okay, so they can come to visit me, but they have to keep their limits in some point. But my son, he will never keep that limits which my students are keeping. Means my son is better for me than my. Do you know what that means? Yeah. And there are lots of other basically proofs, and we say there is no one disagreed on this opinion. Okay, no Shia, no Wahhabis, no anyone. Everyone says he is the best creature. Okay, and there is disagreement only between Ahlul Sunnah and Mu'tazila. Mu'tazila say Jibreel ﷺ, because the angels are better than Muslims. But we say the khawas of angels, the khawas of human being, prophets, they are better than khawas of the angels. And just awam, just normal Muslims are better than normal, ordinary angels. Okay, so there is no disagreement amongst Ahlul Sunnah, but it's only a disagreement between Mu'tazila and Sunnah. Then the best khayri nabiyyin, prophet, ursila, has been sent. And as you know, Nabi, Rasul, there is so many opinions, okay, in terms of differentiating between Nabi and Rasul. And some say Nabi is the one who has a revelation, but he hasn't been ordered to spread it. And some say Nabi is the one who has been ordered to judge by the law and Sharia of the previous Rasul. And the Rasul, he is the one who brings a new law. Did you understand? And it's very, it's impossible to give one description which doesn't get any kind of criticism. Okay, so even whatever you say, I can bring valid criticism from Quran and Sunnah. Okay, so that's why we say Nabi is different from Rasul. Okay, and what is exact difference? We can say in general, one has a new Sharia, or he doesn't have a new Sharia. It's exactly the same as previous, but by some extra changes. We say it is extra change is a new Sharia. Okay, and Nabi is the one who doesn't have a new Sharia, but he basically follows the Sharia of the previous Rasul. Okay, and there is some hadith that has been narrated by Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu. He asks the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, how many prophets were there? So Rasulullah says, 124,000 Nabi, and only 315 of them is Rasul. So it means that there is difference between Rasul and Nabi, and there is ijma' of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah that there is difference between Rasul and Nabi. And well, there is very small group of scholars say that there is no any, but ijma' destroyed their opinion. And recently, Qadianis, they came to destroy, to invalidate these definitions, because they had to back up their own opinion, etc. So anyway, that is Nabi and Rasul. And the hadith of Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu, some of the scholars say it is weak. But we say, inshallah, most likely it is Hasan, authentic hadith, inshallah. Okay, so that is the first line. أبدأ بالحمد مصليا على محمد خير نبي أرسل. I think we've spoken about everything in this text. Then he says, وذي من أقسام الحديث عدة وكل واحد أتى وحده. He says, here is the several kinds of the types of the science of hadith. Idda means several, and you can read it as udda, preparation or equipment. Okay, so udda is, for example, when you are going to journey, you will pick up something for food and drink. So that is your udda. So what is that?
Provision.
Sorry?
Provision.
Provisions. Yeah, so the thing that you will be using it for your journey, drinking, eating. So you can read it as udda also. So it looks like your provisions for your journey in the knowledge of hadith. Did you understand? So you can recite it on both ways, but most likely the author means idda, several. So here is several types of from science of hadith. So sahih, da'if, hasan, etc. Did you understand? So he will be accounting. وَكُلُّ وَاحِدٍ أَتَى وَحَدَّ. And each single scholar came and he did account it, or he did describe it. Okay, so for example, what's the definition of Hasan according to, for example, Hakim? According to him, something specific. According to Bayhaqi, something different. So each single scholar came and then he gave his own definition. Did you understand? Then he says, أولها الصحيح وهو ما اتصل. The first type of these several types of hadith is sahih. And what is that? وهو ما اتصل إسناده ولم يشذ أو يعل. So sahih means any hadith which has been connected, the chain was attached, connected to the previous, so there is no any missing chain, missing like a narrator. وَلَمْ يُشَذَّ, and it's not shadh. Inshallah I'll explain what's shadh. أو يعل, and it is not mu'al also. Then he says, يَرْوِيهِ عَدْلٌ ضَابِطٌ عَنْ مِثْلِهِ. The trustable, strong narrator is narrating it عَنْ مِثْلِهِ, from someone who is again trustable and reliable. مُعْتَمَدٌ, who is reliable in terms of ضَبْطِهِ, in terms of saving the narration from the change. وَنَقْلِهِ, and he is reliable also in terms of narrating that also. So, in here, author mentioned 5 conditions of Sahih Hadith. The first is ittasal isnadu. So, the chain, there shouldn't be any missing narrator. So, if there is, then straight away you have to say it is not Sahih, according to this definition. Because the first ever condition is ittasala isnadu. The chain of the narration has to be linked to each other. Means there is no any missing narrator. So each single narrator is narrating it from his own shaykh, not from the shaykh of his shaykh, and he's missing the shaykh. Did you understand? In here, I would like to give you 2 very important points. The first is about the knowledge, and the second is about the text. The first is the science of hadith. We say it is 2 kinds. One is the Mustalah of Ahnaf, our own Mustalah Al-Hadith, and the second is Mustalah of Muhaddithin. Mustalah of Fuqaha and Mustalah of Muhaddithin. Okay? So, there is differences between Mustalah of Fuqaha and Mustalah of Muhaddithin. So, for example, the first difference I can show you in here, he says it should be the narrator has to take the narration from his own Shaykh, and he shouldn't be missing that. We say it's not a condition. That is condition beneath the first 3 generations. But within the 3 generations, this is not condition. So, if some tabai, or if some tabai, for example, Thawri, Sufyan al-Thawri, he is from Atba' al-Tabi'in, because he is the student of A'mash, who was tabai. So, we say, if Sufyan al-Thawri says, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, Rasulullah ﷺ said. So according to Muhaddithin, it is weak hadith. Am I right? Because the first condition is not there. The condition is Sufyan al-Thawri has to narrate hadith from Tabi'i, and Tabi'i from Sahabi, and Sahabi from the Prophet. We are missing as a minimum 2 narrators. And according to Fuqaha, we say as long as the narrator within first 3 generations, if he is reliable, we say it's not condition, it's not compulsory upon him to mention the names of the narrators from whom he is narrating the hadith. Did you understand? We say, Rasulullah says, خير القرون قرني, the best generation is my generation, which is Sahaba. ثم الذين يلونهم, then the second best generation is Tabi'in. ثم الذين يلونهم, for 3 times. Then the 3rd generation. And then he said, وَبَعْدَهُ يَظْهَرُ الْكَذِبُ أو كما قال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام. So he said, and after these 3 generations, lying will be general. Everyone will be lying. So, because the case in here was 2 problems. One is, maybe one was lying, the missing narrator. And the second is, maybe he was mistaking. Did you understand? So, Ahnaf, Fuqaha, they excluded the first possibility. Because Rasulullah said, they will not be lying. Did you understand? So anyway, inshallah, but this book basically based on the Mustalah of Muhaddithin. Okay, so that's why we say mursal and maqtu' in Hanafi madhab is sahih, but according to Muhaddithin is da'if. Yes.
Are there any scholars who have taken the translation of Qarni to be century rather than generation?
Okay, we say so far I don't remember anyone who did translate Qarn as a century, because if that would be the case, then it's not Atba' al-Tabi'in, because 300 years, because 3 generations to be included in 100 years, 3 generations, okay, and 3 centuries means 9 generations. So even Imam Ahmad and Imam Bukhari, Muslim, all of Sahih Sitta will be within 3 centuries, but not within 3 generations. So Qarn is generation, is not century. Yeah. But in Arabic language, it is possible, it's permissible for you to say Qarn and you will mean century. But Rasulullah he didn't say that. Okay. We say, وَلَمْ يُشَدَّ. So the first condition is the narration has to be narrated without missing narrators. وَلَمْ يُشَدَّ, and it shouldn't be shaz. What is the shaz? Shaz, it is when the reliable narrating the hadith and differently from another reliable narrator. Okay? For example, we say there are 2 narrators. One is Imam Malik, okay, and the second is Ibn Ishaq. Both are reliable, okay. And then the same hadith has been narrated differently. Ibn Ishaq says, "Qala Rasulullah kate wa kate wa kate," and then Imam Malik says, "Qala Rasulullah," and then he's narrating this differently, and both are reliable. Then what to do now? We say we have to look which one has a priority. Which of these 2 narrations has a priority? And priority will be given most of the time because of the narrator. So it could be either the narrator of one side is much more huger, much more reliable than the second narrator. Or sometimes it could be because of the big number of narrators of one hadith. Did you understand? But sometimes it could be several narrators opposing only one, and the narration of one will be more reliable because of his level. Okay, for example, if 3 or 5 normal narrators would oppose Imam Malik, would say no one equals Imam Malik, so he has the right to be accepted. Okay, so we say the non-accepted narration, its name is Shaz. Shaz. Did you understand? So, Shaz is the narration of reliable narrators when he is opposing someone who is more reliable than him. Did you understand? And then the meaning of being more reliable, it could be either because of the level of the more reliable or because of the number of the more reliable narration. Did you understand? Yeah. So that is Shaz. أو يعل. So look, Shaz in Arabic language, if you will say Shaz in Arabic language, means something, because one is just normal principle, and anyone who doesn't fall into the normal principle, he is Shaz. So even, for example, homosexualists in Arabic language named Shaz, because they are out of normal principle, because normally male has to marry female, but if some male marries male, means he is opposing the normal principle. Did you understand? So that is the meaning of Shaz in Arabic language. So it is some detail, some element which is opposing the normal principle. Did you understand? And the opposite of Shaz, for example, Ibn Ishaq, the narration of Ibn Ishaq was Shaz, and what about narration of Imam Malik? That would be Mahfuz. For example, Sahih, opposite of Sahih is Da'if. Shaz, opposite of Shaz is Mahfuz. Mahfuz means protected. Okay? أو يعل. So the first condition of Sahih is Ikhtisaar Sanad, and the second is Adam Shudud. It shouldn't be Shaz, and the third condition of Sahih is أو يعل. It shouldn't be Mu'al. Illa in Arabic language is disease, defect, or illness. You will say Alil. Inni Alil means I am ill. Okay? So Illa is either defect or either illness. Okay? And in Mustalah Al-Hadith terminology, Illa is the defect or weakness or some illness of the narration which looks like Sahih. So the narrators, all of them are just brilliant, and the text is also good. I mean, there is nothing wrong to criticize. But then, if you will ask some expert, he feels that there is something wrong, you know. But then, if you will ask him why is wrong, he will give you some explanation. Then you will say, "What's this?" You will say, "I mean, the Shaykh Saab now is watching Tom and Jerry," because it's not enough convincing proof. Did you understand? So, Illa of hadith is a defect of some sahih hadith, some reliable hadith, in terms of all of the conditions. All of the conditions of being sahih are there. Okay? But only the experts such as Bukhari, Darqutni, that kind of high scholars, they say that it is weak hadith. But then if you ask them where is the weakness, they are not able to give you convincing answer. Did you understand? So we say, Illa in Mustalah Al-Hadith is a hidden defect of reliable hadith. And there is some note in here. They say Illa, So hadith is mu'all. And sometimes they can say mu'allal also. Hadith mu'all or hadith mu'allal. Both to be used for the same meaning. But in terms of Arabic language, mu'allal, it shouldn't be permissible to say for the defected thing. Because allala means to, do you know, there is song for the baby. I mean, when the mother, sorry?
Lullaby. Go to sleep.
Yes.
Lullaby.
So that is allala. So when you say mu'allal in Arabic language means the child who has been, to whom it has been recited, to whom it has been sing. Did you understand? So that is mu'allal. Okay? So in terms of Arabic language, if you want to say defected, then you have to say mu'allal. But if you will say mu'allal, then it is totally different meaning. But we say in terms of Mustalah Al-Hadith, all of the scholars, they did use both of mu'allal and mu'allal for the same meaning. So that's why we say now mu'allal became majaz of mu'allal. We say now is fine. Now, if you remember, just to go back to the issue of shadh, because you guys have been studying Ikhtisaar Uloom for nearly 1 year, so you have to have an idea about the fiqh terminology. So when fuqaha say shadh, riwayah shadh, what do they mean? No, because shadh in hadith is one thing, and shadh in fiqh is totally different thing, am I right? So what is that? So I did explain the shadh of hadith, yes.
Is it an isolated opinion? So like a minor opinion only, which like a strange...
Okay, for example, in that case, I say opinion of valid qira'ah in salat, the mu'tamad is shadh. Because only Abu Hanifa did say it. Or the opinion will say that in tahrima you have to say Allahu Akbar, the lafz of Allahu Akbar, which is wajib. We say that is mu'tamad, but according to your definition, that is shadh also.
No, in terms of its acceptance as something to follow. So, like maybe one person said it, and you know, Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad may have a different opinion, but because the majority of the school decided on Imam Abu Hanifa's opinion, then that's not shadh because of that.
Okay, so we say again in fiqh, mashallah, is correct. Just to repeat on so we say shadh. It could be either riwayah shadh narration, or it could be fatwa shadh. Is shadh opinion. Okay, so riwayah shadh, any riwayah which is not in zahir riwayah and opposes zahir riwayah, we say it is shadh riwayah. Okay, and shadh fatwa, we say it is the opinion of one of the scholars which opposes the principles which has been taken from zahir riwayah. So that is shadh riwayah and shadh fatwa. You should keep on revising the fiqh terminologies also, because you're forgetting it.
So the shadh riwayah and the shadh fatwa?
Fatwa, yes.
And rely on them?
Sorry?
Yes,
all the time? Of course not. It's not. It's weak. Both are weak. So, first, اتصال السند. Second, عدم الشذوذ. Third, عدم العلة. Fourth condition, يرويه عدل ضابط. Adl and ضابط, two things, two conditions. So, adl person, the adl, rawi, should be narrating. What is adl? Adl, that is, we have taqwa and muru'ah. These are two main things in terms of adala. Adala means a person who has taqwa. What's the meaning of taqwa? We say he shouldn't commit a major sin even once in his life, okay, or he shouldn't keep on committing minor sins all the time. So the adl has two conditions. First is taqwa, and the second is muru'ah. So taqwa means he doesn't commit a major sin once, And the second is, he doesn't commit minor sins continuously. Okay? And the second is muru'ah. What is the muru'ah? Muru'ah, it is the basically custom of the area. So if you are in some area, then you should be following the custom of that area. So if you do not follow the custom of that area, means you are not adl. For example, it is custom, if you are from subcontinent and if you are Maulana, then it is custom of the subcontinent that you should be wearing shalwar qamis and turbi, and if you can, then chalma also, the turbi. Okay? But as a minimum, the hat should be there. Did you understand? So, in subcontinent, if any of Maulanas will not be wearing, we say he's not sinful. Is it sin? It's not sin. But he's going against muru'ah. Muru'ah is to apply the custom of the area. Did you understand? Yes. So, but what about, for example, in Syria, if you are imam of some mosque, for them is not conditioned to be wearing shalwar qamis. They could be just normal trousers and normal shirt and suit also. And if you will be in Turkey, then if you are imam, then you have to put on a tie also. Did you understand? Okay, so as it is considered in, shalwar of Turkish imams is the tie. Did you understand? And qamis of Turkish imams is the glasses. Did you understand? So, glasses, it shows how knowledgeable he is. Did you understand? So, and also, if some Maulana from subcontinent sees some Turkish imam, he doesn't have a right to criticize him. Did you understand? Because he's not from subcontinent. He's from some country named Turkey. Okay, and Turkey is not in not in that place. Turkey is different place basically. So we say that is muru'ah. Muru'ah is to follow the custom of your area. Okay. So adala includes two conditions. The first is taqwa, and the second is muru'ah. So both should be there. Taqwa and muru'ah should be there. So by having them both, the person will be adl. But then, question: when do you have to have adala? Mu'tamad position is, as soon as you will start narrating hadith, you have to have it there. But not in the time of learning. Did you understand? So it could be that someone who was learning, studying hadith, and in that time he was disobedient. Did you understand? So for example, he used to, miss salawat quite often. It is a major sin. Okay, etc. But as soon as he became teacher, as soon as he started narrating hadith, he stopped doing any kind of prohibitions. We say that is adl. So adala is important as soon as the narrator will start narrating hadith. Okay? And the fifth condition is dhabit. Dhabit is to make something perfect. Dhabit. We say there is two kinds of dhabit. Dhabit of sudur, dhabit of chests, and dhabit of sutur, dhabit of the papers on which you are writing. The meaning of dhabit is when you are receiving some hadith, without changing it, you have to save it. And how you will save it? Either in your memory or either by writing. Did you understand? And if you remember, there is disagreement in the Tabi'in, is it permissible to write or not? Quite huge number of muhaddith scholars, they used to forbid. They used to say that it is bid'ah to write the knowledge. So you have to memorize it as we did. Okay? And the majority, they say it is recommended to be writing. And even they say Imam Ahmad used to represent the second category, the second group, and even they used to make fun of Imam Ahmad. So once when they asked him, till which you will be keep on writing, so Imam Ahmad replied back to him saying, بِالْمِحْبَرَةِ إِلَى الْمَقْبَرَةِ. He said, by ink pot I will go till my grave. Means till the death I will keep on writing. You understand? And that is just perfect point. So then, Dabt has two kinds of Dabt. Dabt of the memory means you have to keep in your memory everything that your Shaykh said. Okay, without changing it. Okay? And is it possible? We say, yes, of course. We say all of our Hadith scholars, they had just brilliant memory. Okay, so Ibn Abi Dawood, they say the son of Abu Dawood, you know, Sahih Abu Dawood, Sunan Abi Dawood. So his son once came to Baghdad and his students asked him to narrate hadith. So he said, I don't have my books because I left my books in my place and now I'm going to Hajj. No, they said, please, can you? So then he narrated 60,000 hadith from his memory, and then he made a mistake only on 4,000 of them. But 4,000 for us is a big number, but then compare 4,000 to 60,000. You understand? It's just unbelievable. 54 or 56,000 hadith without mistake, and only 4,000 by mistake. I would say, give it to me, I will thank you till my death, you know. So that is the memory of basically scholars. Okay, and Ibn Abi Dawud, son of Abu Dawud, he was famous as by narrating from his books. Did you understand? And even the narrators from the books, they were quite strong in terms of memorizing the hadith. But even by then, they wouldn't narrate hadith without their books. Okay, so in terms of in terms of the memory, the scholars of hadith, they say the most important thing, you have to receive hadith correctly and you have to pass it on correctly. But what about in between? They say it's not necessary to keep it in your mind all this time. Did you understand? And we do oppose them on this point. Abu Hanifa says it is condition of sahih to make dabt while you are receiving hadith, okay, and while you are passing it, and during that 2 times also. So if someone forgets a hadith in between receiving and passing on, we say according to a Hanafi method, it's weak hadith. Did you understand? So for example, as I remember, the hadith, one of the hadith of Imam Shafi radiallahu anhu, as I remember, it was, I think, touching the private place, I think, invalidating wudu. So the narrator has forgotten his narration, but that happened after the narration. What happened? Some of the narrators came to pass on some hadith, and his student went to the Shaykh of the narrator, saying, your student is narrating so and so hadith from you. Is it correct? He said, I don't remember. And afterward, the Shaykh started narrating the same hadith through the student of his student, and then his student saying, my student said that I did say, coming back to him, and carry on to the Prophet. Did you understand? So Abu Hanifa said it is weak hadith. Did you understand? We say, well, how come it's weak? Because he forgotten after passing it on. We say even if he did forget it afterward, but he couldn't recognize that he is the one who did narrate it. So we say it causes some kind of weakness. So we didn't accept that hadith. Yes.
Did you tell us also that Imam Abu Hanifa's sort of hadith was stronger than Imam Bukhari? I don't hear that. In terms of like conditions to verify that the hadith was sahih.
Yes. No, because inshallah condition of the scholars in terms of accepting hadith is different, and we say, of course, for example, look, Abu Hanifa says between receiving and passing it on, you have to keep it in your mind without any change. But Muhaddithin, including Bukhari, he says only receiving and passing, but in between you don't have to keep it in your mind. Did you understand? Yes. So that's the thing. So that is dabt of memory. And dabt of writing, what does it mean? For example, how it used to be. For example, I'm a muhaddith scholar, so I will narrate hadith from my own book. I will read it as it is. Okay? So dabt in terms of memory, you have to keep it, you have to receive it correctly. And some of the students will be receiving by writing, means they have to write it very clearly. And we have some narrators who used to put just letters, okay, which, because a teacher would recite hadith very quickly, okay, so he will not have enough time. So he would just put the names, the letters for the name. Okay, so for example, قال محمد بن إسماعيل البخاري حدثنا فلان عن فلان. So he would say Mim Hamza means Muhammad bin Ismail. Did you understand? So we say it's not acceptable. His narrations will be weak. Why? Because Mim could be Mahmud and Ismail it could be Ibrahim, Mahmud bin Ibrahim. Okay, or it could be Muhammad bin anything. Did you understand? Muhammad bin Aban. What do you think? Because that's also Mim and Hamza. Okay, so we say any narrator uses the symbols for his narration, we say he is not dabit. He's missing the fifth condition of authentic hadith. We do not accept. If you understand. So he has to write it clearly, and after writing it, he has to pick up the original copy of his shaykh and compare it. Then correct it. So if he doesn't make muqabala, comparing, that is also not authentic because there is no doubt. And even after comparing, he has to save his original copy. Sometimes it could be he will give it to his student and his student will take and he will correct in the copy of his shaykh also. Did you understand? So we say his books are not reliable also. Did you understand? Okay, so that is all included into the dhabt of the second kind. Dhabt of the papers. Dhabt of sutur.
So you said like if the person who's listening at the rights in shorthand, if he doesn't check with the text of his teacher, then that would be so.
No. Even
if he does.
Because because in his copy it is Mim Hamza, and in the copy of his Shaykh Muhammad bin Ismail. So Mim and Hamza is there, and he didn't correct it.
Right.
He didn't completely write it. So he left it as Mim and Hamza. We say it is still weak. You understand? And then he says معتمد في ضبطه ونقله, and this adl has to narrate hadith عن مثله, someone who is similar to him, means ضبط adl and ضابط also, okay, till the end of the chain. Then معتمد في ضبطه ونقله, and he should be reliable in terms of saving the narration and naqlihi, in terms of narrating it also. Okay, so let's revise briefly the 5 conditions of Sahih Hadith. The first condition is Ikhtisaar Uloom, so the chain basically connected, there is no any missing narrator. And the second condition is it shouldn't be shadh. Third, it shouldn't be mu'al, defective. Fourth, the narrator has to be adl. Fifth, the narrator has to be dhabit. That's it. And then he says, وَالْحَسَنُ الْمَعْرُوفُ طُرْقًا وَغَدَتْ رِجَالُهُ لَا كَالصَّحِيحِ اشْتَهَرَتْ. Al-Hasan, the second category of authentic hadith, Al-Ma'rufu Turqan, it is recognized ways, the recognized chains, the recognized ways of narration. وَغَدَتْ, and it goes رِجَالُهُ لَا كَالصَّحِيحِ اشْتَهَرَتْ. Its narrators, they are not such famous as the narrators of Sahih. Did you understand? Well, I say there is some kind of there is some kind of non-clear point. Am I right? So what did you understand? What's the difference between Sahih and Hasan?
The narrators aren't as popular.
So okay. So because that what he's referring to. So he says the narrators of Hasan is not that famous as the narrators of Sahih, and being famous, it's by being recognized to muhaddithin, not for us. Okay, because for us, maybe Shu'ba. The other day I was teaching about Adab al-Mufrad, and I asked the audience, is there anyone who knows Shu'ba? No one knew, you know. Shu'ba is the most famous scholar of hadith, you know. They know Bukhari, but they don't know Shu'ba. Shu'ba is much more than Bukhari. Okay? So in terms of normal people, though recognizing someone is not important, but the scholars of hadith. But then, you know, the same poem of Bayquniya has been corrected by son of Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda. His name is Shaykh Abdul Sattar Abu Ghudda. Okay, so basically Shaykh Abdul Sattar Abu Ghudda, he's just an amazing scholar. He basically took the same text and he made a correction. So for example, in here, it's not that clear. So he did change. He did change this text from the text that he made from himself. So the text of Shaykh Abdul Sattar Abu Ghudda is as following. والحسن الخفيف ضبطا إذ غدت رجاله لا كالصحيح اشتهرت. He says, and Hasan is خفيف ضبطا. In terms of ضبط, is slightly less than ضبط of the Sahih. The narrator of Hasan, in terms of ضبط, he is weaker, smaller, lower than the narrator of Sahih. Okay? And then رجاله لا كالصحيح اشتهرت, and it's the same thing. So its narrators is not that famous as the narrators of Sahih. In terms of, it's not that famous by being reliable, quite reliable in terms of ضبط. Did you understand? And I say this is better because the difference, according to Muhaddithin, the difference between Sahih and Hasan, the narrators of Hasan in terms of ضبط will be smaller, lower than Sahih. Did you understand? Yes. So for example, the narrator of Sahih, he can make, while he's narrating, he can make mistake only twice or for 3 times. Did you understand? But Hasan, he will make mistake for 6 or 10 times. Did you understand? Understood, inshallah? So we say that is Hasan.
So even if it's just one of the narrators, all the rest of them are strong.
Because
one of them is
yes, because the lowest in here destroys the highest. So, for example, let's suppose Malik narrating from Shu'ba, or Malik from Nafi' from Ibn Umar. It is the golden chain. Okay, and there is some narrator of Hasan after Malik. We say it is Hasan. But if it wouldn't be this narrator of Hasan, we would say it is golden chain. Did you understand? So the lowest destroys the biggest. And the same thing, for example, smallest group destroys the biggest group. For example, number of mutawatir, again number of mutawatir, and then only one person. We say it is khabar al-ahad, because the lowest destroys the biggest in this knowledge.
Shaykh,
Yes.
what if you have one chain and all the narrators are considered Hasan narrators, and you had another chain where all the narrators are considered to be Sahih except one who is Hasan? So how do you differentiate between the two chains?
I didn't understand.
You have one chain where each person in the chain is considered like a Hasan,
Yes.
standard and narrator. So maybe 4 or 5 people, Hasan. Then you have another chain where everyone's Sahih but one who's Hasan.
Yeah.
So are they both considered Hasan, or is
No. The second narration is Sahih.
Yeah.
So that is Sahih for itself. And this Hasan, we say it is Sahih because of that Sahih.
Alright.
On its own, it is Hasan, but it is Sahih li-ghayrihi. Because the same hadith has been narrated by other way, which is Sahih. So we say this on itself, this narration is Hasan, but because of Sahih narration, we say it became Sahih.
I think you missed the point. If a hadith has been related in the isnad, you have 2 people who are sahih, and then you have one Hasan in between.
Yeah. So we say
Then
it's
the whole
Hasan.
thing becomes Hasan.
Hasan, yes.
Yeah, it's Hasan.
Yeah.
no difference
No.
between-
I'm
even if there was any Sahih, and there's another
Doesn't
hadith
matter.
which is different hadith,
Yeah.
where everyone is Hasan,
Yeah.
they're both equal. So they're both Hassan. Makes no difference. No
Yes,
one
no,
greater
no.
Hassan than the other.
Yeah,
The chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
yeah. No, yeah.
So that's what.
Then he says, وكل ما عن رتبة الحسن قصر أو عن رتبة الحسن قصر فهو الضعيف وهو أقسام كثر. And any narration that doesn't reach the level of Hasan, so that is ضعيف. That is ضعيف, and ضعيف is أقسام كثر. It is a lot of types. Okay? So anything which doesn't reach as a minimum the level of Hasan, so that is weak. Okay, so by missing one of the conditions of Hasan, it becomes weak. Okay, so for example, there is one narrator is missing, so that is munqata or mu'adal. Okay, or we say one of the narrators has weak memory, so we say it's not dabit. Narrator is not dabit. Or one of the narrators, for example, is committing major sins. We say it's the riwayah of non-adl. Or it's shadh, for example, or it is mu'al. Did you understand? So, and it is a lot of kinds. And we don't want to go into the detail because it is the first, our text in terms of Mustalah Al-Hadith. So we want to keep it as basic. So he says, وَكُلُّ مَا عَنْ رُتْبَةِ الْحُسْنِ قَصُورٍ, and any narration that doesn't reach the level of Hasan, فَهُوَ, so that narration is ضَعِيف. وَهُوَ أَقْسَامٌ كُثُرٍ. And ضَعِيف has a lot of types, a lot of kinds. For example, mu'adal, munqati', mawdu', munkar, okay, shad, etc. Then he says, وَمَا أُضِيفَ لِلنَّبِيِّ الْمَرْفُوعُ, and any hadith has been attached to the Prophet ﷺ that is marfoo'. Okay, so for example, I will say now, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كذا وكذا. So, is it marfoo' or not? Yes, because as long as I am naming the Prophet ﷺ means it is marfoo'. Did you understand? But what about the chain? It doesn't matter. It could be there or it may not be there. Did you understand? So marfoo', hadithul marfoo' means it is from the Prophet ﷺ. So it doesn't mean just by saying marfoo' that hadith is reliable. Did you understand? It could be without isnad. So marfoo' it means only one thing. It is from the Prophet ﷺ. Rafa'a in Arabic language means to rise something. Okay, so marfoo' means the narration has been risen to the Prophet ﷺ. It has been attached to him. Okay? And then he says, وَمَا لِتَابِعٍ هُوَ الْمَقْطُوعُ, and anything that has been attached to tabi'i, so that named maqtu' hadith. Did you understand? So marfu' means from the Prophet ﷺ, and if he says it is maqtu' hadith, means it is from tabi'i. Okay, so now I will ask you, for example, Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib is Hasan al-Basri is tabi'i. So Hasan al-Basri is saying now, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كيت وكيت. I'm saying now to you, Hasan al-Basri said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كيت وكيت وكيت. So what is this narration? He says ما للتابعين, and anything attached to tabi'i, maqtu'. So it is maqtu'.
You said that.
Excellent. It is Hasan al-Basri is attaching it to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So maqtu' is when it ends up on tabi'i. Did you understand? Okay, so for example, Hasan al-Basri radiallahu anhu once said, O son of Adam, and carried on. So that is maqtu'. Okay, and in here, just to clarify, maqtu' means it is anything about the tabi or it is from tabi. But he has to be the end point in the narration. Yes.
So descriptive hadith.
Yeah.
Because obviously Prophet is not going to say I look like this. Yeah. They're going to be usually maqtu' because the tabi is going to be describing.
No. If he is describing the Prophet, that is marfoo'. Anything which ends on the Prophet, that is marfoo'. Did you understand? And then we say, in here, there is some small dispute. You have to keep it in your mind. Bayhaqi and Imam Shafi'i radiallahu anhu, whenever they say maqtu', it is their own terminology. They do not mean this maqtu'. Did you understand? Maqtu' in Arabic language is cut. Okay? So we have different kind of hadith which named munqati'. According to the majority of muhaddithin. Munqati' means there is one narrator is missing in the chain. Only one. So this is munqati'. Because there is one cut. Okay? So for that munqati', Bayhaqi and Shafi'i, they say maqtu'. And for our maqtu', they say munqati'. Did you understand? So keep this in your mind. So if you will find in some of the books, for example, author is saying, for example, Imam Shafi'i said that this narration is maqtu', so you shouldn't think that it's from Tabi'i. So he's referring that it is munqati', it's not maqtu'. So maqtu' is, according to the majority of muhaddithin, anything that attached to the Tabi'i. But according to Shafi'i and Bayhaqi, anything, any narration in which only one narrator is missing, that is maqtu'.
So when you say about maqtu', it's when Tabi'in is saying something, but he doesn't say the Prophet ﷺ said this.
That is maqtu'.
So, but like anything, like for example, when you sleep on a bed, you sleep on the right side. If you say something like that, for example, it's
Yes.
narration,
Yes.
which hasn't got attributed to the Prophet ﷺ.
Well, we say it's basically any narration from Tabi'i. It could be two things. One, something that could be understood by analogy. Also, did you understand? So we say it doesn't have hukum that it is marfoo. Because we say Tabi' understood it by himself.
Right.
Or the second, which cannot be set up by analogy. For example, number 3, 4. For example, he says there are 500,000 angels in Bayt al-Ma'mur. So it cannot be known by analogy. So even if it is maqtu' hadith, but we say hukman, it is marfu'. Because no one can say it except the Prophet ﷺ. So even if Tabi is saying from himself, we say it is marfu'. Because Tabi on his own cannot know this.
That's right.
Now, he said, any hadith that attached to the Prophet is marfu'. Any hadith that attached to Tabi is maqtu'. Do you think that we are missing something in here?
The Sahaba.
Sahabi. So any hadith that attached to Sahabi named mawquf. 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 So, lots of time you can find the scholars saying روي هذا الحديث موقوفا ومرفوعا. They say this hadith has been narrated as mawquf and as marfu' also. Means as mawquf means as a speech of one of the Sahaba. As marfu' means as some of Sahaba said it from the Prophet ﷺ. Okay.
So you know, for example, Siddiq, when he sent out his armies,
Yeah.
and he gave them advice, just, don't cut off trees and things like that. So would that be considered mawquf?
Sorry?
You know, when Prophet Siddiq, when he sent out the armies,
Yeah.
when
That
he
is
gave
mawquf.
general advice, nasiha.
Yeah, that is
Would that be
yes.
considered
Mawquf,
mawquf?
yes. Mawquf. Or for example, do you remember Sari al-Jabal? Umar shouted.
Yeah.
So that's mawquf also.
The same will apply to the second azan in Jummah.
That's also,
Well,
we say yes, Usman he is the one who did set up.
Yeah, but that is still mawquf.
Mawquf, yes, it is from him, yes. And then he says, وَالْمُسْنَدُ الْمُتَّصِلُ الْإِسْنَادِ مِنْ رَاوِيهِ حَتَّى الْمُصْطَفَى وَلَمْ يبين. وَالْمُسْنَدُ الْمُتَّصِلُ الْإِسْنَادِ مِنْ رَاوِيهِ حَتَّى الْمُصْطَفَى وَلَمْ يبين. Look. Maybe if I would be here, first I would give the definition of muttasil. Muttasil, just let's go to the next lane, please. وَمَا بِسَمْعِ كُلِّ رَاوٍ يَتَّصِلْ إِسْنَادُهُ لِلْمُصْطَفَى فَالْمُتَّصِلْ. Any narration that goes to the Prophet ﷺ by hearing each single narrator from his shaykh, so that is muttasil. Ittasala means linked, not cut, but linked. So he says, وَمَا بِسَمْعِ كُلِّ رَاوٍ يَتَّصِلْ. Any narration that linked by hearing, getting the narration from his own shaykh, isnaduhu, by in the chain, لِلْمُصْطَفَى, till the Prophet ﷺ, فَالْمُتَّصِل. So its name is muttasil. Did you understand? So muttasil is the narration which is linked there is no any missing narrator. Okay? And what is marfoo?
Marfoo is directly attributed to the Prophet.
Yes, attached to the Prophet. And muttasil is linked
all the way to the Prophet.
Yes. And muttasil could be weak. Did you understand? It's not a condition for muttasil to not to be weak. It could be weak. There is some, for example, but weakness shouldn't be because of missing narrators. It could be because of weak memory or because of disobedience of one of the narrators. Okay? Then, والمسند المتصل الإسناد من راويه حتى المصطفى ولم يبن. Definition of musnad is, it is marfoo muttasil. Did you understand? What is musnad? Musnad is marfoo muttasil hadith named musnad.
So when they say the musnad of Imam Ahmad,
yes.
So it's just Imam Ahmad hadith connected to Prophet.
Yes, yes. So means musnad is hadith that from the narrator till the Prophet ﷺ, all of the narrators are there, not any missing. And also it is attached to the Prophet ﷺ. So that is musnad. So when narration will combine, will meet these two conditions, which is to be marfoo and to be muttasil, we say now hadith is musnad. Did you understand?
But it's still not the same category as sahih.
No. Musnad could be sahih, it could be dhaif also. So what is the definition of musnad? Musnad is marfoo muttasil. So marfoo on its own cannot be musnad. It doesn't have to be musnad, and muttasil on its own, it does mean that it is musnad. So when hadith will meet these two conditions, being marfoo and being musnad, muttasil, we say it became musnad now. So now we have got muttasil, but it ends up on one of tabi'in. So is it musnad or not? It has to be marfoo. Mawquf and maqtu' cannot be musnad. Musnad is only the narration which has all of the narrators. There is no any missing narrator, and it is attached to the Prophet ﷺ. So that is musnad. Okay, look what he says. Wal musnadu, musnad is al-muttasil al-isnad. It is the connected. Isnad is connected, linked. Min rawihi, from its narrator, the last narrator, hatta al-Mustafa, till the Prophet ﷺ, walam yabin, and there is no any cut, there is no any missing narrators. Did you understand? So musnad is marfoo muttasil. And the next bit will he translate. So وما بسمع كل راو يتصل إسناده للمصطفى فالمتصل. And any narration that each single narrator did hear the narration from his own Shaykh till the Prophet. So there is no any missing narrator. So that is muttasil. Did you understand? I did translate it. The next hadith, the next category is musalsal. Silsila in Arabic language means chain. Silsila is do I have silsila in here? How to give different translation to silsila?
Ongoing.
No. Silsila. Salasil. Do you know silsila?
Chain.
Metallic things.
Chains.
Yeah.
Chains.
Yeah. Do you know
Links.
Yeah. So that is silsila. So what is musalsal? Okay. So from its name, is there anyone who can give a definition for this? Just by looking at its name, silsila, musalsal. Linked. That is muttasil. Linked. That is muttasil. What you're referring to? Am I right? Yes. So what is musalsal?
Where you haven't taken it directly from my teacher, from his teacher, from his teacher.
That is muttasil.
Yeah, that's muttasil.
Yes.
Musalsal is where you're saying where you haven't taken it necessarily directly all the way up to the Prophet.
That is munqata.
But you know each of the people in the chain. You just haven't.
That is mudallas.
Okay.
You can take it from more than one teacher.
that is mashhur or aziz.
Is it not to say when there's no limit to us as to how many people there are in the chain, but musalsal has to have so many chains to be.
So that is either aziz or mashhur or mutawatir.
Musalsal might be the hadith that's been linked all the way down, but when you repeat it, you don't mention anybody. You say, well, it's a musalsal hadith.
That is mu'allaq. That's mu'allaq. We say musalsal is when the narrators narrating hadith on the same way, on the same position or on the same description. Rasulullah ﷺ said once, the iman of nobody will be perfect till he accepts the good decree and bad decree. All of that is from God. And then Rasulullah he kept his beard saying, آمنت بالقدر خيره وشره وحلوه ومره. I did accept that all of decree, good and bad, sweet and bitter, all of that is from God by keeping the beard. So the Sahabi, when he did narrate this hadith, after narrating hadith, he kept his beard and then he repeated the word that Rasulullah said. He said, آمنت بالقدر خيره وشره وحلوه ومره. And then Tabi also did the same. And Atba' Tabi did the same, and everyone. So that is musalsal. That linked to the Prophet ﷺ in one way, description or form or position. Okay, or the other, when Rasulullah ﷺ said some hadith, for example, after saying that hadith, he did smile. So Sahabi, he narrated that hadith, and after narrating the hadith, he did smile, because Rasulullah did. And Tabi also did the same, narrated hadith and then smile. So that is musalsal.
So when the description is written, that makes it musalsal?
No. It is the narrators are narrating on the same position, repeating the same thing.
Yeah. No, but when you read in musalsal hadith, it's okay to be narrated. But if you read in a hadith and say this musalsal, you will have to say on that, and then he did this.
Yes. So you have to say it. And if you will do the same as your Shaykh did, then even it is still musalsal. But if you will not do that, then we say it was musalsal before you. Did you understand? And also, musalsal, it could be by description or by doing something, smiling or scratching the hand or etc. Or sometimes it could be by the tribe. So all of the narrators of the same hadith is from the same tribe, Qurayshis. Or it is all of them from Ahlul Bayt. Okay, or all of them are from the same place. All of the narrators are from Sham. All of the narrators from Mecca. All of the narrators are from Iraq. We say all of that is musalsal. Did you understand? So, musalsal it is something about the narrators. Did you understand? So it is the description of the narrators when it's this description to be repeated always to you, basically. Did you understand? So he says, مسلسل قل ما على وصف أتى مثل أما والله أنبأني الفتى كذاك قد حدثنيه قائما أو بعد أن حدثني تبسما. He says, مسلسل قل, say anything ما على وصف أتى, anything which comes on one description, on a narration that comes on the same description. مثل, for example, أما والله أنبأني الفتى. So each of the narrators will say, أما والله, I swear by God, أنبأني الفتى, that some young man did narrate this hadith. And then he said, أما والله قد أنبأني الفتى, and that all of them till the Prophet ﷺ, they did repeat the same way of narrations. Okay, so they didn't say حدثنا فلان عن فلان, but they say أما والله أنبأني الفتى قال أما والله أنبأني الفتى قال أما والله أنبأني الفتى قال أما والله أنبأني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So all of them, while while they were narrating, they repeated the same word. أما والله أنبأني الفتى. Or كذاك, or قد حدثنيه قائما. So he's saying, my Shaykh narrated it by standing. And he was standing and he did narrate hadith, and then he said, my Shaykh while he was standing said, that his Shaykh while he was standing said, till the Prophet ﷺ. Did you understand? Or the third example of the musalsal is, بعد أن حدثني تبسم. After he did narrate this hadith, he did smile. Okay? Well, and why do we need this musalsal? We say it is not something extra. I mean, it doesn't back up the hadith, or it doesn't make that brilliant point, but we say sometimes it can benefit you from that if he does recognize in which position his shaykh was while he was narrating hadith, means it proves that his memory is quite strong. Did you understand? Does make sense? This is one thing. And the second is, sometimes if they will narrate the position on which Rasulullah was speaking, it gives better understanding of hadith sometimes. Did you understand? So we have that kind of beautiful points in Musalsal Hadith. Okay. The next, Al-Hadith Al-Aziz and Al-Hadith Al-Mashhur. عزيز مروي اثنين أو ثلاثة مشهور مروي فوق ما ثلاثة. So it is the text of Bayquniya. He says, Aziz in Arabic language means it has several meanings. One is rare, or one is expensive. Okay? Or Aziz, even more, self-respecting. Did you understand? So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of his attributes is Aziz. Okay, so Allah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. فإن زللتم بعد ما بينا لكم الآيات فإن الله عزيز حكيم. If you will be misguided, even though we did explain all of the signs, all of the commands and prohibitions, فإن الله عزيز حكيم. So then Allah is self-respecting and He is wise. What does it mean? It means if you will, even after explaining, if you will be misguided, then Allah will not come to you to please you. Did you understand? So that is Aziz. So Aziz in here is rare. Or sometimes Aziz can give meaning of power, strong. You will say, Innahu Aziz means he's strong. Okay?
Independent.
Sorry?
I think you say independent.
Independent is someone.
Mashhur is to be popular or fame, to be famous. So he says, Aziz, what is Aziz? Marwi yuthnaini aw thalatha. Aziz, it is the narration of two narrators, means the same hadith has been narrated by two ways, or he says aw thalatha, or three. The same text, Ad-Din al-Nasiha, has two chains, or three. Did you understand? Two Sahaba and, each Sahaba, narrating.
Two separate chains.
Two separate. No, two separate. Yeah. Or three. So that is according to Bayquniya, Aziz. Did you understand? And then, Mashhur according to Bayquniya, Marwiyu, it is the narration of فوق ما ثلاثة, more than three chains. Did you understand? But as you remember, the reliable opinion of Muhaddithin, Aziz is the narration of two narrators, two chains. As soon as there will be three, it becomes mashhur. Did you understand? So there is some kind of misunderstanding in the text. So that's why Shaykh Abdul Sattar Abu Ghudda, he did exchange this text into his own text, in which he said, Azizun marwiyu thnaini ya bahasa, mashhurun marwiyun an thalatha. Means Aziz is the narration of two narrators, two chains, two isnads, or expert, bahasa, or the one who's looking for the knowledge. Mashhur, but mashhur is marwiyun an thalatha. So mashhur is the narration of three isnads. Did you understand? So I think the text of suggestion of Shaykh Abu Sadr is more reliable.
If there's only one companion and he relates it to many tabi'in, will that be still classed as one chain?
According to Muhaddithin, that yes. Yes. So inshallah understood. But then question, what is the benefit of having 2 isnads or more? Does it make hadith sahih or not? We say it doesn't mean that. It could be 3 narrations, which is mashhur, and still it could be da'if. Did you understand? So it depends on the strength of each single narration. But if it is 3 weak ahadith, and the weakness of them is not that strong, did you understand? So for example, 3 narrations, and in the narration of each single of these 3, there is some person who has slightly weak memory. We say now it became Hasan li ghayrihi. Hasan li ghayrihi. But before that it was da'if. And because of several narrations, we say it is Hasan li ghayrihi. Why li ghayrihi means because of some other reason. Why is not Hasan li dhatihi? Because Hasan li dhatihi doesn't have any weak narrator. And it became Hasan li ghayrihi, Hasan because of some other condition, because of the several narrations. You understand? Yeah. So, just by saying that it is Aziz hadith or Mashhur hadith, it doesn't mean that hadith is Sahih. It doesn't mean that. The next is Al-Hadith, and maybe we are missing one thing. What do you think? Are we missing something? No. Mutawatir is coming. Narration of 2 people and narration of 2 chains, 3 chains. Are we missing something? 1 named ghareeb or fard. Ghareeb. So if it is only 1 isnad, then it is ghareeb hadith, fard hadith. For example, Innamal A'malu Bin-Niyyat. That is ghareeb hadith. That is fard hadith. That's not aziz and that's not mashhur and that's not mutawatir either. That is fard and ghareeb hadith. Did you understand?
Is that the same as ahad?
No, all of 3 are ahad. Fard, ghareeb, aziz and mashhur are ahad. So ahad is opposite of mutawatir. So ahad is not opposite of aziz or mashhur. So all 3, okay, ghareeb, fard, 2 names for one thing, fard and ghareeb, and aziz and mashhur, all of them are ahad. Ahad is opposite of mutawatir. Al-Hadith al-Mu'an'an and Al-Hadith al-Mubham. Mu'an'anun ka'an sa'idin an karam wa mubhamun ma fihi rawin lam yusam. Mu'an'an, an'anahu in Arabic language means he made an. He said an. You understand? And mubham, abhama means he didn't clarify. Rajulun mubham means unknown person. Do you understand? Yes. So he says, mu'an'anun, hadith mu'an'an. What is the hadith al-mu'an'an? Ka'an sa'idin an karam. Any hadith in which we have an. Okay, because normally they say qala fulan, someone said. But if he says an fulan, so now story changed. Did you understand? So for example, if I would say haddathani, for example, someone, means he did say it to me. But then if I would say an fulan, an means from. So does it mean that he did say it to me? It doesn't necessarily mean that. So I can say an Ibn Umar. Can I say it or not? I can. But can I say haddathani Ibn Umar? I cannot. So an, it could be that I did take it from him directly. Okay, do not confuse him because we are making, Chanel or whatever, L'Oreal, Paris, whatever. Yes, so and it could, there is possibility of taking the hadith directly, or there is possibility that I did take it through someone from him. Did you understand? So an, it basically lowers, somehow it lowers the narration. So if you will find any hadith in which it says an fulan, so you have to say hadithun mu'an'an. Did you understand? So there is no haddathana, all of them is not saying haddathana or qala or anything else. But they are saying mu'an'an. They are saying an. Okay, but then, does it mean that just by saying an, it weakens the hadith? We say no. So if the person is very famous of hiding his weak teachers and going directly to the reliable teacher of his weak teachers, we say if that person says an, we do not accept that narration. Did you understand? So for example, I'm famous that I love to hide my weak shuyukh. Okay, for example, I'm narrating from someone named Muhammad, or for example, let's say Abbas. And he's narrating from Shaykh Abdul Razak Al-Halabi. Abdul Razak Al-Halabi is very famous and reliable. But Abbas, his narrator, my Shaykh, is weak. Okay, so whenever when I have weak shuyukh, when I'm narrating hadith from my weak shuyukh, I like to not mention them, so people will take from me a knowledge. Straight away I say, An Abdul Razak Al-Halabi. Did you understand? So if I am famous of doing that, then whenever I say An, it will be weak hadith. But if I will say Haddathana Abdul Razak Al-Halabi, then it will be accepted. Did you understand? So just by saying An, it doesn't mean that it is weak. It will be weak only if the narrator is well known as hiding his weak shuyukh. Did you understand?
So if Imam Bukhari was to say an Abu Huraira,
Yeah.
that would make it weak because he's just skipping the.
No, you're mixing up too many things. So it could be when you are basically skipping your Shaykh.
Just your Shaykh.
Your Shaykh, yeah. Yeah. But when Imam Bukhari says An Abi Hurairah, that is mu'allaq. So he is leaving the last bit, of the narrators, and straight away he is jumping to the earliest ones. We say that is mu'allaq.
If somebody says, like for example, حدثنا فلان عن فلان عن فلان, it's not mu'annan.
That's mu'annan. Even if everyone says haddathana, but only one of the narrators says an, so we say that is mu'annan. Because we say the lowest thing destroys the highest thing. So high is to say haddathana, but low to say an. We say everything is mu'annan. So it takes the level of mu'annan. And yeah.
So would you not just use that word an? Do you mean hadathana as well?
Sure.
Instead of using hadathana that I heard, could you say an? Or would they just use those words interchangeably?
No. Whenever because for example, look, how do you find in terms of Hanafi faqih quoting from Zahir Riwayah? It's very huge, am I right? All the time I narrate from Zahir Riwayah. So it is my honor to narrate from Zahir Riwayah. So it is the same with muhaddithin. It is their honor to say haddathani as the highest, means you took hadith individually from him. And the second is haddathana, means I was there also with lots of others. So if the person has a chance to say haddathani, he will never go to anything else, because it's his honor, So if he's saying akhbarana or anba'ana or an, means there is something wrong in there. They mean something there. Did you understand? Yeah. So you have to stay awake.
So akhbarna or akhbarni.
Akhbarna is, for example, you will ask me a question, writing, I will reply back to you on the back of the page. Then if you will narrate that fatwa from me, you will say akhbarani.
Right.
It's not permissible for you to say haddathani, because I didn't make tahdith to you, but I have written. So akhbarani. Or anba'ani also. Then he says, وَمُبْهَمٌ مَا فِيهِ رَاوٍ لَمْ يُسَمَّ. And mubham hadith is a hadith when there is one of the narrators hasn't been named. Okay? For example, I will say, someone told me that Shaykh Abdul Razak Al-Halabi saying so and so on. So this hadith is mubham. Why? Because the person between me and Shaykh Abdul Razak Al-Halabi is not named. Because I'm telling, someone told me. Did you understand? Some man or some lady told me. Okay? So that is mubham. But then we have other thing which is majhul, unknown. What's the difference between majhul hadith and mubham hadith? Mubham hadith, when that narrator will not be named. What's his name? I didn't say it. And majhul, if I will name him, but no one knows who is this person. So I do name the person, but no one knows the narrator. That is majhul. Okay? And what's the meaning of majhul? The meaning of majhul is there is only one person is narrating from that person. As soon as two narrators will be narrating from the same person, is not majhul. Did you understand? Yes. So inshallah we will talk about it later on. So, mubham and majhul, understood inshallah. Now my question, is mubham one of the categories of weak or not? Mubham or majhul, both. According to muhaddithin, if this mubham person or majhul person is not sahabi, but tabi and onward, we say it is weak. But according to fuqaha, according to especially ahnaf, if this mubham or majhul narrator is not within the first 3 generations, then it becomes weak. But if Imam Malik says, حدثني رجل عن أبي هريرة, okay, we say it is, according to muhaddithin, weak. But according to fuqaha, it is strong. Did you understand? And Shaykh Abdul Sattar Abu Ghudda, again, he made his note in here. Look, mu'an'anun ka'an sa'idin an karam. Mu'an'an is the hadith in which it says an sa'id and an karam. But Shaykh Abdul Sattar Abu Ghudda is suggesting that we should be saying mu'an'anul mudallisina an karam. So, mu'an'an of mudallis narrators is like an karam. Did you understand? Why? Because the person who is well known as hiding weak shuyukh, his name in hadith is mudallis. Did you understand? Okay? So if he is not mudallis, then there is no any problem for non-mudallis narrator to say an. Did you understand? So it is problem only with mudallisin. Did you understand? So that was the suggestion of Shaykh Abdul Sattar Abu Ghudda. But I think, in here, both are same, inshallah. But what he is doing, what he is trying to do, the point that he's trying to make is just brilliant. Then he says, الحديث العالي, high hadith, and الحديث النازل الإسناد. وكل ما قلت رجاله على وضد ذاك الذي قد نزل. So he says, any narration in which we have less number of narrators, so that hadith is aliyul isnad, high chain hadith. Because, for example, let's say Imam Bukhari is reaching the Prophet ﷺ by 3 narrators. Did you understand? So we say that is ali. And if Imam Bukhari will reach the Prophet ﷺ by 7 narrators, we say that is nazil. Did you understand? Understanding? And is there any point of Ali and Nazil? We say it makes sense if, because by having small number of narrators, the possibility of mistaking it will decrease. Am I right? Yeah. But then it will affect only mainly in one scenario. If the narrators of the, for example, if we will have 2 hadiths, one is Nazil and one is Ali, contradicting with each other. So muhaddithin, they give priority to the Ali straight away. We say, as muhaddithin, as fuqaha, we say sometimes the narrators of the Nazil, it could be fuqaha. Did you understand? For example, Imam Ahmad is narrating from Shafi'i, and Shafi'i from Malik. Malik from, for example, Shabi. And Shabi is from Ibrahim Nakhai. And Ibrahim Nakhai is from Aswad. And Aswad from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. 6 narrators. Okay, and the second is Nafi' Salim ibn Umar. Okay, so the first chain is the chain of fuqaha. Did you understand? And the second is, for example, Nafi', he wasn't faqih, and Salim wasn't either. They were as brilliant narrators. So we say the first chain, even if it is longer, it has priority on top of the narration of muhaddithin. Because the fuqaha, they will be understanding the narration. Okay, and if there is something wrong, they wouldn't be narrating hadith. Did you understand? Yes.
It's narrating from fuqaha only musalsal as well.
Sorry?
It's like narrating from only fuqaha. It will be named musalsal as well.
No, of course, yeah. Musalsal bil fuqaha. We say that's fine, yes. So that is the difference between Ali al-Isnad and Nazil al-Isnad. Inshallah understood. Ali and Nazil. And here is the definition of mawquf. Do you remember? He said anything that attached to the Prophet is marfoo, and anything that attached to the Sahaba, to Tabi'in, that is maqtu'. And then he says, وَمَا أَضَفْتَهُ إِلَى الْأَصْحَابِ مِنْ قَوْلٍ أَوْ وَفِعْلٍ فَهُوَ مَوْقُوفٍ زُكٍ. So he says, anything that you are attaching to ashab, to the Sahaba, and what is that? Qawl, speech, fi'l, or acting, okay? فَهُوَ, so that's name is mawquf. That zukin, that known as mawquf. We did explain this, okay? And what do you think about mawquf? Is it reliable or not? We say, according to Hanafi madhab, the action or the opinion or the fatwa of Sahaba, that is one of the sources of our religion. But according to Imam Shafi and the other Imams, it's not one of the sources of our religion, basically. Did you understand? And there is some explanation. For example, they say if it is something that could be known by analogy and etc. Do you remember? Yeah, we say if there is there is only one opinion of Sahaba and no one is opposing that opinion amongst Sahaba, we say that is source of our religion. But if some other Sahaba will be opposing, so now we have a right to choose one of these opinions, but not the third opinion. You have to choose one of these two. But then, if disagreement will happen in the time of Tabi'in, there is two opinions, then Abu Hanifa can make his own third opinion also. Did you understand?